Hi everyone, very happy to have you join me today to talk about fabulous images. I have over the course of my career in communications and creative services sourced a lot of photos and illustrations for flyers, posters, email blasts, many of the same types of projects that you might be using in your student organizations to create buzz for your activities and events. Since I know that student org budgets are really tight, I'm going to speak to you today about how you find images that you can use in those types of projects that you can use for free with permission to use them. We're going to be talking about open license images, which I'm a term I'm using loosely to indicate that they have very few restrictions on them. One thing that we need to talk about before we go into images themselves is a common misconception about use of images that you pull from the web, which is that you can use any image you find as long as you cite the source. Not true. Easy to understand why people might think that in an academic environment because we're so used to dealing with research, which is created with the intention of sharing. But this is a little bit different. When you cite a research study or an article or something like that in text, what you're doing is pulling some small portion of that intellectual property and including the idea, and then in your references, pointing people to the original source in its entirety. When you use an image, you are taking the intellectual property itself and repurposing it for your own use, and that's different. That is plagiarism. And when you're talking about copyright violation, you're talking about something that is specifically illegal. Now, there are people who go to law school to learn about copyright law, so we are certainly not going to be able to cover all of the bases in just a few minutes. So what we're going to do is talk about a couple of tips and some resources that you can use that you don't have to worry about or you don't know about the law in order to use them. Couple of things that I want to cover before we go online, and that's some offline resources that you might want to take a look at as a wonderful, if not preferred, alternative to going to the web. One is look within your own student organization. You probably have some really talented folks there who are ready to be showcased, and if you snap the photo or pen the illustration or paint the painting and scan it or take a picture, whatever the case may be, you can use that however you like because it is yours. Now, if you're talking about photographs, you do have to be a little bit you do have to consider who is in those photos before you use them. Unfortunately, we're not going to have the time to get into the specifics of that too much, but I would be remiss in not mentioning that original work is a great alternative. It's fun, and you know that nobody else is going to be using it. Your speakers, performers, third-party vendors are also great resources. Anyone that you might work with who does events on a regular basis is probably going to have a pretty good stockpile of images that they use for publicity purposes. They're free, they're good quality, and you know that they're going to be approved by the person with whom you're working. So all you have to do is ask. So that said, we're going to go online and take a look at some images, and we're going to keep a couple of things in mind when we're trying to find them. One is that we want to be sure that the original source is identified, or that we feel pretty sure that we're pulling it from the original source, because only the original source can give permissions. And the permission on the image has to be pretty clearly outlined so that you know exactly how to use it. So that said, we're going to go into our first resource, which is Wikimedia. Now, you may be familiar with Wikipedia. You may not know that there's a whole wiki family of products out there that are great resources. One is Wikimedia Commons. We're going to click onto that. This is where you can find images that are under Creative Commons licenses. And Creative Commons is a nonprofit. I'll actually give you their words on what they do. They are devoted to expanding the range of creative works available for others to build upon legally and to share. This is a great resource for images. I find this is a go-to for political images or images that have to do with place. We can see that the picture of the day today is a nice image of a museum in Russia. How lovely. So if I want to use this, I'm going to go to the download button. I'll click on that. And let me mention too, before we explore too further, that the sites that we're going to be going into are listed in a reference slide at the end of our time together, so you don't have to worry about bookmarking any of these. If you are following along in your own browser alongside, you will get a copy of them later. So if I want to download, I have a choice about different sizes that I can use for different types of projects. We aren't going to get into technical specs here, but I will give you a tip that anytime you have a choice about file size, always go for the largest. Very easy to take a large file and downsize it. Doesn't work in the other direction. You lose the integrity of the file and things start to get a little bit fuzzy and pixelated. You'll see here that it does tell you that if you use this image, then you need to attribute the author. And the nice feature in Wikimedia is that when it gives you that heads up, if you click on the Show Me How option, then in both HTML form and in plain text format, it gives you information that you can simply copy and paste right over the image when you place it into your document or put it someplace else in your creative work so that you know that you're citing it properly. Couldn't be easier. Now, another resource, there we go. If you like Creative Commons images, you can go right to the source and go into the search feature in creativecommons.org. Generally, you never want to just Google and grab because you're going to get a lot of images that you don't have the permissions to use along with the ones that you do. The nice thing about this type of search feature is that it takes you to all the different places. You're actually selecting which one you want to use. Different places where Creative Commons imagery is available, and it's going to pull up only those images that do have a Creative Commons license so that you don't have to search through all of the images to find the ones that you want. And despite what I just said about not Googling generally, you will see that Google is an option here. But this does something very nice for you. I'm going to search for cupcakes because I like cupcakes, and I'm going to have them at my event. So if I put that into the search feature and I choose Google, and then I go into images, you're going to see that there's a line here that's part of the tools setting that you may not have even known that was there. And it puts parameters around your search. So you can see that it's already identified as labeled for non-commercial reuse with modification. That means you can change it a little bit. We're not going to change it all, so I'm just going to say go right to labeled for non-commercial use. That means simply that you're not going to put it on a t-shirt and resell it and make money off of it. It's still fine for you to use it for an event that is going to make money in some way, like a fundraiser or something like that. And you can see if you scroll over some of the images that come up as options that some of them are actually Wikimedia options. This one is. So if we had gone through Wikimedia, we would have gotten some of these same options as well. As you can also see, some of the other features under the tools give you other search options. I really like the size feature for the reasons that we just discussed. So there is an opportunity here if you want to go straight to Google to just set those parameters for yourself. So just be aware that those are under tools and you can choose whatever parameters you want to use, but especially the license is one that you want to be focused on a bit. Flickr is another option that you might have seen under that those search options in Creative Commons. Flickr you might be familiar with because it's a great way to share photos with family, friends, that sort of thing. There are all kinds of images on this site, and I use it very regularly. A lot of professional photographers use this. A lot of amateur photographers who are really great use this, and they are willing to share. You just have to know how to search. So let's say in this instance, we're going to look for puppies because that sounds fun. And when we search in our images, you can see that here too, we have an opportunity to specify what type of license we want to use. One of the options is no known copyright restrictions, which is going to bring up images that are in the public domain. Those are images that have no copyright, trademark, any kind of license restrictions at all. We're going to get more choices, however, if we go with a Creative Commons license, which means they have some sort of restriction on them, even if they aren't too tight. And we are going to get a new set of images. Oh, those are so cute. And I'm going to pull one of them up so you can see what your options are once you get to an image that you want to use. If you want to download, which is here, you can do that here. You can do that there. But before you actually download, you want to take a look at what the restrictions are. The icons here will tell you what they are. And if you're not sure what those icons mean, you can always click on that little cheat link, which will take you into an area that explains what they are. This says that this image does need to be attributed. So we're going to have to go back to where we found the image, see the name of the photographer that took that photo so that we can give her credit in the credit line. So when we use that image in our project, we're going to add a line onto the photo itself or somewhere else in the project that says simply that the image is from Flickr, give the name of the image if an image name is provided, and say photo by, and make sure that you attribute the photographer for the image. Now we mentioned public domain. There are also sites where you can go and get public domain images. The Public Domain Project is a great resource. These are very open. Public domain images are often historical images whose copyrights have simply expired. Sometimes, though, they're just images that people don't want to put any restrictions on, and so they put them out into the public domain and say, there you go, have at it. As you can see, you can find footage that is audio form, video form, plain images. You can get 3D models. This is a great resource, especially for historical images, but for all types of images, and you just search for what you're looking for here. Now, something to keep in mind when you're sourcing images, you want to make sure that whatever you pull is an accurate representation of what it is you're trying to communicate. If you were trying to publicize a Carnival on the Green event and you use this image on your left to talk about the inflatables that you're going to have at the event, and then people show up to the event and it's this sad little bouncy house that you see on the right, they are probably not going to be happy. You also want to keep in mind that whether or not you follow all of these rules of licensing and making sure that you have permission to use images, that it is about more than just the legalities. Because let's be honest, if you put together a poster and you include a copyrighted image of Jay-Z, is Jay-Z ever going to see it? If Jay-Z saw it, would he track you down and sue you because you used it and weren't supposed to? The answer to those questions are probably not. But I would ask you to also ask yourself, is knowing that you are probably not going to get caught justification for doing something that you know isn't right? The way you represent your student org and yourself in the activities that you do here on campus are helping to lay the groundwork for your professional life and your professional ethics going forward. So I would ask you to consider that when you're sourcing these images and be sure that you make good choices. Here are some of the URLs that we visited today, some of the ways that I've sourced the images that you've seen throughout the presentation, which are all, by the way, Creative Commons or public domain images. So as you can see, there are lots of great ones out there. I hope that learning how to do this will help you not only in promoting your student orgs, but you might be able to utilize it in some of your academic work as well. Happy hunting.